Yo, what's good? My name's Adam, and what you just watched was a real-time scene captured entirely in Unreal Engine 5. Almost every asset was created by myself using a range of techniques that I'll get into shortly. But before we get into all of that, let's take a step back. I've been creating environments now for just the better part of a decade. I've worked for a few places in that time, but I've mostly just been working for myself, doing whatever I find interesting, and that's led us here, to this scene that I'm showcasing you all today. I'm going to go through some of the elements on screen and give an overview from how we went from this to this. This project started on a warm, cold day in June. I decided I wanted to create something a bit out of my comfort zone. Now, I'm traditionally quite good at making interior spaces that use modern materials, shapes and designs, so like offices, hallways, and generally more confined spaces. This project was going to be a test in how well I could execute something that I'd never really tried. So let's start off with the first thing that I tackled: the bricks. The main materials of this church were created using various techniques. The most common one, and personally my favourite, is photogrammetry. For those of you who don't know, photogrammetry is the process of taking a real-world object and translating it onto a computer. The process involves taking hundreds of photos sometimes and using a program called reality capture to process them. There's a lot that goes on between taking the photos and what you see in Engine, so I'll keep it brief. First you take the pictures, then you process them in Lightroom to make them all even, then you process it in reality capture and make any adjustments you might need. Then you edit them in ZBrush, reduce the mesh and clean it up, bake the textures down to a game-ready model, edit it in something like Substance Painter, and then you can bring it into the engine. After all that, they definitely work for the first time in the engine with no adjustments whatsoever. Well, that's the short version of it anyway. So after all that, here's the material set up in Unreal. You can see it kind of needs a bit of work, like it's all the same. So, in order to fix that, I added two more materials. I made a stucco texture, again from the same nearby place, and a large brick that I got when I was on holiday. Once you combine these three materials together in a harmonious and beautiful fashion, the walls can go from this to this. Before I go any further, I should probably mention how I made the church's structure. Rather than going the traditional route of using modular pieces, which have their downsides, I decided I would just make it entirely in Maya in a single piece. This obviously does come with its downsides as well, but for this project, this is how I was going to make it. After I had everything in place, I realised I'd neglected the floor. The poor thing at this time was just the default cube mesh from Unreal, and it needed some love. I knew I wanted it to be a red tile, so the first thing I did was slap down a default texture plane and check how it looked. After some quick editing magic, this is what it looked like after I pressed the Make Floor button, which is standard in Unreal. See? Game art is easy. Anyone can do it. Deranged armchair game developers' opinions aside, this floor was created using some tiles in Maya, baking them down in Substance Painter, and layering them up until I got the desired effect. You can see here how each layer slowly influences the final result I wanted. And I did use Vertex Paint again to add some more visual breakup where it was needed. Now that the floor was laid down, it still needed something. It was really flat and it just needed some more small frequency details to make everything pop. So the first thing I thought I would do was add some little rocks by simulating them onto the ground. Once they're in place, if you just select them and press the K button, Unreal remembers that, so when you stop simulating, they'll keep their place. Just remember to make sure they're not still simulating physics, otherwise it's going to have some problems down the line. Next thing, I did a little photo shoot with some leaves I found in my garden. And quickly scanned them, baked them down, and used the foliage tool in Unreal to paint them on the floor in places where I thought they would build up. You might be asking, why are there leaves in this church? And you should stop asking questions and mind your own damn business. Props. They're one of my favourite things to create because they're just so self-contained and you can really give a huge amount of personality to them, and it can really bring a scene to life. The church looks great, but it felt like nobody used it. I wanted to pad it out with assets that I thought would match, so I created some benches, some chairs, candlesticks, candles, ladders, altars, and the chandelier. This asset alone took over a week to create from scratch. I had to painstakingly recreate all the vibrant details of the Byzantine area. It's built in 10 pieces and duplicated radially, and then I baked it down and placed it in the editor. It is truly something that brings the scene together, and in my opinion, it's the star of the show. And then there's also these other props I made, whatever. Some of these assets were scanned, some of them were handmade, some of them were sculpted. I won't go into all of them because otherwise this video would be 50 minutes long. I will mention one or two assets before I get to the cinematic, and one of those is an asset I'm really proud of, and that's the brick corners. I wanted to break up the CG looking straight edges, so I took a scan of a brick corner and I edited it to match up and fit them along the corners. Yes, that does include the curves around the arches as well. These guys were pretty straightforward. I sculpted the candles by hand in ZBrush, and then I enlisted the help of my friend Bear, who you'll hear more about in a minute, to help make a flipbook of the candle flame. I made the shader always face the camera and scattered them about the scene. Now, for the cinematic, which I'm sure you've all been waiting for. Even at the start of this project, I knew I wanted something more than just what the scene was. I wanted something epic to happen, and I wasn't just content with creating a regular scene. I really wanted to push it to the next level. Luckily, my friend, who I mentioned earlier, Bear, is a wizard with Houdini, and after some back and forth and some wonderful illustrations by myself, he was able to take my floor mesh and destroy it using Houdini. He also created some particle effects using Niagara, and he sent the scene over and I got to work setting it up. I saved out a new version of the scene and completely remade the lighting, focusing mostly around the candles. I knew I wanted something to come bursting through the floor, so I put an area light beneath it and tested it out. After that, I set about making everything in the scene feel like it was reacting to the violent earth shaking, which was actually fairly difficult. All the sounds, particle effects, and physics interaction happens at real time in Unreal, so I can play this scene over and over and over again, and each time it will be a little bit different, but it doesn't take 70 hours to render. It's in real time, running in Unreal Engine 5. And to prove that, I'm going to walk around it in the scene while it happens. So yeah, that's that. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'd love to do more of these in the future, so let me know in the comments what you'd like to see from me. There are 1,000 things that I could talk about in this process, but I hope what I've shown you today was interesting enough to keep you until the end. Until next time, I'm Adam.